Many thanks, Alex, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for another great attendance this evening, and a very warm welcome to Nadine, Minister of State for Mental Health, Suicide Prevention and Patient Safety. There were many things I could say tonight in introducing Nadine. I've always been a great admirer of Nadine, but I'll just give you a couple of them at the introduction. First of all, everything she's achieved in life so far is based upon pure merit. As she will say, she was born in Liverpool in a council house and then went on to have a rarity these days, I think, real life experience of, first of all, a trainee nurse, then worked overseas, back into the healthcare sector, started her own business, worked as a media advisor, and then obviously into MP for Mid-Bedfordshire, and now, great news, Minister of State. The other thing I would say is that I've always found, and I'm sure you have, if you followed her, she's just a breath of fresh air. She understands ordinary people. She'll understand everything this evening that you'll put to her. And she tells it as it is, whether she's speaking about a former Speaker of the House of Commons, a former party leader, or policy. And I think, you know, one fascinating quote from Nadine, some of you will know she was down to the final 17 for the shortlist in Mid-Bedfordshire. She went through to the final 3 and won the ballot on the first count. And she said afterwards, 3 weeks before the 2005 general election, I, a council estate Scouser, was selected as the Conservative candidate to represent a southern rural constituency on merit. I think that was absolutely wonderful. And what a pity we don't have more of those real achievers as members of Parliament. And finally, Nadine, at the moment in her current role, is a first-class match of person and role in the current pandemic. She understands what people are facing, and indeed, as you'll recall, was the first MP to actually be diagnosed with COVID herself. Nadine, it's a great pleasure to welcome you, and really over to you.
Hi, Don. Hello, everybody. Good evening. And thanks for that lovely introduction, Don. And I'm an equally big fan of Don and Brian. Love them both, known them for a very long time. And in fact, I was at the launch of Conservative Voice, which was quite a few years ago now, I think, in Westminster. Yeah. I can't remember, what was it, 2010?
2000, it was 8 years ago, Nadine.
Right, gosh. So yeah, I remember that first day, and it's really interesting because getting the voice of the general public through. You know, I hear it in my association and my members and people I see in my surgeries, but the people I see in my surgeries are not all Conservatives, and quite often they will come with a completely different agenda. And I do obviously meet members of Parliament and people in my own association and my own executive regularly, and their voice is always Conservative, but we've known each other now for 16 years. And so we almost know what the other one thinks about almost everything. And so actually getting new voices through and hearing new thoughts is really important. And that's not that I don't cherish my association, my membership, I absolutely do. You know, they're like an extended part of my family now, to be honest. But it's but we don't have those kind of challenging conversations any longer. So it's always great to speak to a different association or to an organization like this to hear what you're actually thinking, because you know, you are our core vote, and you are the people who decide who the leader of our party is going to be, and therefore by doing that you decide what policy and what policies and what kind of aspiration for the future we take. So I have been, you know, Don's done a very good summary of my background. So I'm not to talk about me, I'm going to talk about where we are now, and hopefully have a good Q&A afterwards. I much prefer to do Q&As than to lecture people or talk to people. Or, yeah, speeches are not my natural forte. But I've been, since I was promoted to Minister of Health, which was last summer, I have been, Don's quite right, I was one of the first people to be, first people in the country actually to be diagnosed. I think we'd had 4 deaths in the UK on the day I was diagnosed. But being in health, I'd been present at all of the meetings with the Chief Medical Officer and the team, and a couple of COBRA meetings before. And I knew the potential of this virus in a way that probably the day I was diagnosed, the general public didn't quite know. I knew the pathology of the virus. I knew what we were possibly looking at in the future and what the potential death toll was. So it was quite frightening. But what was also scary was that I came home from Westminster and brought it back to my mum, who was staying with me, who's 84. And thankfully, we're both okay. And she was amazing. She had it for 24 hours and was as right as rain the next day. That is not the case with most people who are 84 and get this virus. I was ill for 2 weeks, went back to work, should not have gone back to work, ended up back in bed and poorly again. I had it quite severe compared to my mum, who's had rheumatic fever and heart valve replaced and has lived through, you know, the war, and absolute trooper. And the next morning, that's my second morning, she came and tapped at my bedroom door and said through the crack in the door, "Would you like a cup of tea, love?" And I was like dying. She, 84 years old, was trooping down the stairs to get me a cup of tea. So, and that's the thing about this virus, is it's indiscriminate. We don't know who it's going to take down, and we don't know when, and we don't know how badly it's going to. And that makes it so difficult to explain to the public how important compliance is with the social distancing, because they may know someone like my mum and think, well, you know, what this is nothing worse than the flu, when actually it is far, far more deadly than the flu. And they may think that to themselves, well, you know, everybody in our road has had it, everyone's been fine, what is all the fuss about? Well, the fuss is about what you see happening in intensive care units. And when we use the expression, this is about protecting the NHS, I feel that maybe we should have gone a bit further and explained a bit more about what protecting the NHS meant. And I think because people didn't really see in the first wave what that was. And I only think that during the second wave that maybe that message has begun to get across, particularly when we saw scenes like the ICU in Liverpool becoming almost full with only 1% of beds left in the hospital. Or people saw the pictures coming out of Italy of people on the floor having lost their life before a doctor could even have a chance to see them in the accident and emergency departments. Because what people also didn't realise was that doctors and nurses catch COVID too. And we lost people who died as a result in the first wave. So protecting the NHS was also about protecting the staff and making sure the staff are still there to look after people who are coming in who are poorly. And I think so many messages possibly weren't really truly understood. But we were fighting an epidemic, and the only thing I can tell you is that in health, we have worked, my own staff, my own private office staff in the first wave worked 39 hours straight through without even going home. We as ministers have worked 7 days a week, every single day since the pandemic struck. I have not had a single day off. And I'm not saying that because I expect any sympathy. I'm saying that because I want people to understand that the full weight of both the government machine, and everybody with any degree of expertise that we have brought in to help us has been working relentlessly to get on top of this. And it really does, it's kind of disappointing, I suppose, when you hear the accusations against test and trace and contact tracing, because one thing we can't say is that actually many people don't want to be traced, they don't want to be contacted. And you know, one story that I've heard recently is that when the contact tracers try to contact people, they switch their phone off and they don't answer the phone. They know they're about to be contacted, and so won't answer the phone because they don't want to be contacted. They don't want to isolate. So we've been up against some real problems, but of course, today is a great day because today we have good news coming through most days at the moment, but I hope everybody can see where the future's going and how it's going to look. And the combination of both vaccines, we've always said, I was absolutely excoriated for saying very early on, we need a vaccine and we need a treatment to be able to ever be free from lockdowns. We were always going to be in the lockdown without a treatment or a vaccine. And having both completely changes the scenario. And so people have said to me today at meetings, we've had meetings today, and people have said, so does this mean that we are now going to be free of COVID? Well, it doesn't actually mean that. COVID is still here. It is always going to be amongst us. Our job now is to get ahead of it with this vaccine, and then make sure we've got adaptations of the vaccine for future mutations going forward. Will we always have to socially distance? I would think anybody with any sense will still wear masks when they go into shops, and will still be very strict about hand hygiene, and will still protect themselves going forward. But because testing isn't treatment, testing is letting you know whether you have it or don't, and whether you can transmit it or not. But we are getting there with treatments as well. In hospitals, dexamethasone, different uses of oxygen therapies, different ways of managing patients have begun to give us real results. And so we are getting there, and with the vaccines as well, of course, we are getting there. But coronavirus is here to stay. It isn't getting to herd immunity is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take us quite a long time to get there. We need to get somewhere in the region of 60% of the population. That's quite an ask, but we are getting there, and we can see a completely different Christmas next year. We can see a completely different summer from what we've had now. The sooner we can start rolling out, of course, we'll start with our most vulnerable patients. We'll start with our healthcare workers so that they are there. We protect them. They're there to help, people who still get it and still go into hospital. We're there to make sure that they don't transmit the virus to the most vulnerable people who are patients in hospital. We'll vaccinate care home workers so that those who are our most vulnerable, again, in care homes are protected, and they will be vaccinated. And then we'll start from the clinically extremely vulnerable, and then we'll work our way down. It's going to take a long while to get down to those of you who are in your 30s and 40s. It's going to, to children and grandchildren. It's going to get a bit of a while to get there. But, if you're fit and healthy, you don't have a lot to worry about. Just keep yourself safe. But it's good news, and what amazing news. We are leading the world in terms of not only the production of the vaccine, AstraZeneca vaccine, we've got 100 million of that. We've got 100 million more than any other country in the world, both the Pfizer, the Mondial, the AstraZeneca, and there's two others whose name I can't remember at the moment. We are leading the world in the number of vaccines we have stocked, and we've got in and we've ordered. So, we're going to be ahead of the game on this, which is going to be fantastic. And policies are being developed to, open up to free society, and, to coin a phrase that we have in the Department of Health and Social Care, to get back to doing the things and being with the people that you love. And, it's having been, and nobody is more ecstatic about that or feels that more than we do, having worked for it day and night since the end of February. And it's good news going forward.